You can say he was a hero. You can say he was totally evil. But chances are there's something in between for everybody. I mean, it's all history is humankind.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You are in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Aboud, and I am here with Paul Schaefer, Tanya Charlton, and returning guest, Mr. Dustin Warren.
Hello.
Glad to have you, Dustin.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes.
I assume nothing exploded since last time when I came on or anything.
No, we just keep hoping. Maybe this time.
We can make it happen.
That's right. Dustin, you teach high school students here at Highlands Latin School, and you teach various history classes.
Yeah.
Can you list those for us?
Medieval, European, and U.S. So kind of Western history, part 1, 2, 3. I kind of, as I spin to the kids a little bit.
Okay. That's wonderful. And you are a beloved teacher. And
people say that, yes.
That's right. They do.
I feel it would be prideful. I say, yeah, they love me. That sounds arrogant.
You're a favorite.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wonderful. And we have Dustin, our history expert, here because today's topic is one that a lot of teachers and parents face every school year. And it is how to handle the hard parts of history. Things like injustice and violence, the darker chapters that we can't and shouldn't ignore. So today we are going to explore in our conversation how to talk about those honestly and in an age-appropriate way with our students. But before we get into that, what are we reading? Paul?
I feel
like you've always got a couple things in the hopper.
Well, that's the problem. I want to be able to say, like, I finished this, but because I haven't finished anything because I've got too many things in the hopper. The one thing I haven't mentioned that I'm reading on the show that I am reading, and this is a teaser for, I think, next week if we talk about it, but I've been asked to read Education of a Wandering Man by Louis L'Amour. So I'm making my way through that, which is a fun read. I
saw that on your desk, and it made me curious.
Yeah, no, it is good. But I will hold my thoughts until next week.
Oh, fun.
Okay. Audiobook or
actually,
he's got the book.
The funny thing is that I had the book. Kathy Becker had given me the book. I want to say at Christmas with a collection of his short stories too, or something. And I started reading short stories, and I had just kind of left this on my shelf.
Oh, nice.
So then when somebody mentioned it, I was like, okay, I'll go pick that up and I'll read it.
Has Kathy read it?
Yes, I believe she has.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Well, I brought mine because I can't ever remember the name of it. The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. I'm on volume 4. Aren't they pretty?
They're beautiful.
But there are 8 of them, and you see there's all this white space because it's a journal. And I don't know why it's called Unselected Journals, but I am loving them. They are laugh out loud funny.
Are there some like from like a given day that are just really mundane and just there's nothing interesting happening there?
They're very short if there's nothing interesting happening. You know, It could say something very short, but they've gotten, as I've moved on, they've gotten longer. And so that makes me feel like it's worth my money better. Like this one, I mean, the first one was 120 pages and I paid $10 for it. And there are 8 of these, and I've bought them all because I just am really enjoying it. But I wish I could read it as one book instead of
It's always nice having the one collection.
You've gotten so used to Charles Dickens, books or Melville.
Well, and just not, one book would cost quite a bit less. Altogether, I've bought 8 books, and it's like $100 for this selection, and everyone's a different color. And so they look so pretty together.
That was a good marketing decision on their part.
Yes, but I'd never heard of this before. I'd be anxious to hear if anybody else has ever read these, because I don't know how Catherine found them. But she wants me to clear her name because last time I said I was reading this and I was mad at her because it was costing me a fortune that she got me started with this. But she said, well, now that you love it, you need to tell everybody that you love it and clear my name. So I do love it. $100 worth. I should really love it, right? Mm-hmm. I hope it can. But I think there's going to be like 12 of them maybe, and
so
8 are published.
$50 to go.
Yes. Well, I hope they keep getting longer. I don't mind paying for a book. And I love, my books are the things that I love. I will buy another bookcase if I need to. Mm-hmm. But I hate to pay $10 for 120 pages that you read in 2 days. Unless it's like Winnie the Pooh, a picture book that, that is illustrated. But this is literally all text.
Have you checked at the library?
No, I don't. Our local library is not all that great. I can't imagine they have it.
That's great.
That they would have these. But now I bought them all because I fell in love with the looks of them as well.
So you like having them? Yeah.
That's right.
Dustin, what are you reading?
I'm 2/3, 3/4. Let's say 3/4. That sounds better. Through Boethius's Consolation Philosophy, which I have not read before.
Yeah.
I was going to read Dante, so Mr. Yankee would stop harassing me about it.
Yes.
But I was like, well, I probably should start with that, and then maybe I don't think I've ever read Aeneid either. I read the Iliad and the Odyssey when I was younger.
I haven't actually. I read the Aeneid for boys and girls, but I literally have not read the Aeneid, and I need to do. Maybe we should do that together.
I know the basic like plot points and stuff, like the kind of stuff that
Maybe
happens.
we could get one of the teachers of the Aeneid to do a book club or something with us.
I might the high school book club. They're going to do Frankenstein. I read that a decade ago, and I haven't read in a long time. So part of me is like, man, I need to read. I can't remember much. I mean, I remember enjoying it as a college student, but I also don't remember. I remember thinking this is really different than the movie.
I think I read it in the past 5 years again.
Yeah.
We did it for a book club.
Yeah.
We did for Memoria Press, and I feel so sorry for the monster. I can't. It's
it's brutal.
It's brutal. I'm not revisiting that. I've had to revisit Lassie so many times. But Frankenstein's not in our curriculum, so I am not forced to do it. I was surprised.
I think we read like
Moby
an
Dick,
excerpt.
I felt sorry for the whale.
Yeah, we read an excerpt in European history when we do Romanticism, because it's like a good example of romantic work. Suspicion of Science.
Right.
And I guess maybe a few of them, because they're like, yeah, we read it. We thought it'd be interesting to read. And I was like, well, fits the season, I guess. It's about to be, October and all that.
Right.
Anyway,
it's the perfect season.
Perfect season for it. So they're like trying to get me to come in, so I might reread it. Maybe, I don't know. Too many books.
You could talk about it even without rereading it.
Yeah. It's been a little while, but I remember especially there's a lot of biblical, classical themes that get involved. Yeah. I feel like the movies I like the movies as a kid, the classic horror movie, like 1930s. But it was different in the book. It's better in the book, I think.
Did you say that like you read an excerpt and happened to mention it, and a couple of kids went and picked it up and read it?
Yeah, I did like say like I really enjoyed the book, like as in the college. I just picked it up on my own out of curiosity.
Yeah,
and we did read like an emotionally charged passage, like where he talks about I've become like the angel. It's like I'm gonna butcher her prose, but like the archangel who rebelled, I am chained in an eternal hell, which is like a great final line to the passage. So I think that may have kind of gripped them a little bit. It also may have been a thunderstorm going on, which may have added to the ambiance maybe. But anyway, I'm probably making that up, but I feel like there was a thunderstorm going on, possibly. So,
that's funny.
Anyway.
Good reads. As we head into fall, I feel like my reading kind of slows down when things get busy in the fall and winter.
Beginning of school,
summer
hurts,
for me. I don't read anything serious. So this was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, except this summer was Moby Dick, which all the high school lit teachers were supposed to read. I'm the only one who read it.
You're the only one who read it? None of the high school lit. So Mr. Breland didn't read it?
No. He got halfway finished. He did not finish it.
Oof.
I said to Jennifer Heinze, did you read Moby Dick? No. I'm literally
it's like they pranked you.
Like I didn't even have to do it.
And your principles.
But it was on my list.
Yeah.
And
you enjoyed
I'm happy
it.
that I did. I did enjoy it, surprisingly.
I read the kids' version. I liked it, but that was the kids' version when I was like 7. I'm sure the main book's a little different. I remember you talking about like the gore in one scene. Yeah.
It is gory.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, tearing that whale apart to get all the stuff out.
They use everything.
They do use everything. Yes.
Great conservationists back in
out of necessity.
Well, it was materialism too. They were going to sell it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
But it was also, you didn't kill an animal for one part of it.
That's right. Or for no parts.
Right.
Just for sport. They were not whaling for sport.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Well, on to our listener question that is going to take us into the theme of today's podcast. It was such a good question. We thought we are going to make this an entire episode. We got an email from Alyssa about how to teach the hard parts of history. And here is what she wrote us. I've heard it mentioned on the podcast a few times now that you want to teach students to love their country in the context of teaching history. In light of that, how do you tackle the hard parts of our history? Do we still want to teach the wrong things our country and Western civilization more broadly have done? Then she says, I thought this was interesting. I've been struck recently by how much the Bible narrative seems to focus on the faults of the people's leaders, not glossing over them at all, and I infer that there is much to learn from those faults. I know the answer will be different for different ages. At the younger ages, when it isn't age appropriate to teach many of the hard parts of history, how do we teach it honestly? Many students each went through a period of jarring disillusionment when they realized heroes of history that they look back on based on teaching in the younger grade actually didn't live out the basic morality of the faith many of them claim to share with us. At the older ages, it seems reasonable to expect students to react with anger at some of the horrifying things in our history. How do we direct them? I thought she raised excellent points and questions. So hopefully, Alyssa, we will get to all or almost all of your questions and curiosities. And I want to start, these questions are going to be for everybody. I want to start with, why do we even need to teach the hard parts?
Because they happened.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to, well, we want to teach the truth, right? And if you're only ever, right, we're motivated by the carrot and the stick, right? And if we're thinking about this as history, learning history helps us understand what it means to be human, then we need to look at the good things and we need to look at the bad things, and we need to own up to that.
The bad things, hopefully, we will learn from so that we don't repeat them. Mm-hmm. And it's not a charmed life. If we just give students the good things, then they're going to expect only good things in their lives.
Mm-hmm. You like reading Proverbs and not reading Job.
Right.
Yeah. Not that Proverbs is bad, but you got several wisdom books.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's right. Well, to some of Alyssa's questions about the different ages, maybe we can tackle that kind of all in one go. And I think one way we could do that is maybe present a topic. Like, we could take anything. Let's take Christopher Columbus. And maybe we have one teacher and they're going to walk into a classroom of second graders. And then the next day, they're going to walk into a classroom of seventh graders. And maybe the last day of the week, they're going to walk into a classroom of juniors and seniors. They probably are going to present the information differently each day. What would you say to that teacher going into each day?
I can do second grade.
Yeah. Okay. I have not taught second graders Columbus.
I'm going to leave you to high school.
That's what I'm used to.
It doesn't have to be. It's just a topic
for young students.
Right.
Young students, we would teach that he was courageous by just getting in that little boat and sailing into nowhere land. And that he, we credit him with discovering our country. And that would be it. We wouldn't be talking to very young students about anything that happened after that. It would literally be that he was, it takes a real courage to, and we would focus too on his determination, that this, before he actually gets on the boat, that he worked so hard to get the sponsorship so that he could go on this adventure. But that would be it.
That would be it.
When I think when you get into middle school, right? In middle school, you start dealing with more of the details of what actually happened, right? Early on, you're like, well, 1492, Columbus sails, right? Like that's what you need to know. Then you have to learn later in middle school, actually, that it wasn't just he showed up here. It was like, hey, it's land, and then he sailed back and he's done, right? Like there's a whole lot more interaction that happens, what that interaction is. And so they start getting more of the meat, if you will, of what this person actually does. So some of it is still like fact finding, if you will, at that age of I have to start learning like what he actually did. And then, I would expect, honestly, some of the contextualization to start happening there. I don't think you would dig deep into it, but I think you would start kind of laying a groundwork of there's some things that either he did or he let his men do, or that even just the discovery of America sets up, right?
For the other explorers as well.
Right. That then make this discovery something, a bigger thing for us to talk about than just, he was a great guy because he was, a Catholic who was sailing for Spain and found, a bunch of gold, right? I mean, fundamentally, right, like that's one of the things that
and
the Spanish
our
crown
country
was very, very happy about.
Of course. But then for high school,
the ending,
do you
where it all ends?
How deep do you go into his life after he landed?
Yeah, because when you get to high school, history, they're almost college level. It's almost like elementary, middle school. They get like a little bit that's kind of age appropriate, which people kind of debate about what's appropriate at that age, like when they teach the Bible, parts of the Bible and stuff. High school is when you can kind of get, though you can't go as far as college. That's obviously more detail. You can get a bit more into the nuances, I think, complexity, because also their thinking skills, I think, are better by then. They can handle a bit more of that, so they don't like short circuit between just good and evil purely. So like Columbus, when we do Columbus, so we can get the bigger system of like, okay, so like the context of Spain and Spain's wars with their Muslim neighbors in the South and what they did there, and vice versa, what each side did to each other. So the world they're coming out of, where slavery is still that's still a thing in the medieval world. That's a common practice. Sacking cities, they don't surrender. That's a common practice, though we would see that as terrible now. So Columbus, kind of understanding Columbus's world, then him coming over, sailing, and then we can look at his journals now, I think. So we look at some of his journals, which there are parts of his journals which are a little rough to read, right? How he talks about some things. Of course, he also is a man who's doing what some of the men would do themselves, or some who would do worse in some cases. So you can get more into the complexity of it, I think, with the high schoolers. And they can still say, okay, his intrepidness, his brilliance, his daring is there. There's also things that his men does or he does, and there's a lot of historical controversy over to what extent. And people, argue with Columbus, was he the man or was there more other figures? Was it just the system? Historians love to argue about everything.
But they are. But you don't have to have the answers.
No.
You just have to present all the different sides.
Yeah.
And then
they can handle basically like the shades of it, the layers.
Yes,
of it
that better. I think is a huge point that you made when you said, that like when they're younger, it's good or evil, which is true. They have trouble with gray.
Yeah.
And so as they do developmentally, and as we through this education even that we're giving them, we're training them to be able to handle gray.
Yeah. And I think that's a phenomenal point that gray has to be taught really before they leave the home. Because I saw this in history classes in college where, this college professor was not holding back at all about things that happened in American history. And there were history majors in the class that we're talking about, everything I learned in high school, it was all wrong. Like, this is the reality of what happened. And they were completely disillusioned about America because they had only been taught that America was this great country and really not presenting any flaws in whatever historical education they got. So then when they hit the opposite, which they're going to hit in college, or even if you go read an adult nonfiction book about history, like they're not going to... They're not going to sugarcoat it. And so then there was no structure around to help them understand the gray. It was like, it was all good. Oh, no, it's all bad. Right. But if you can do this before they leave the home, you can actually have that structure to help them learn that.
So they're not threatened when they get to college. So that they know they can back away from things. And I found that with my kids in college, that they didn't just automatically accept what their professor taught them because they had been taught that there is more than one side to a story and that people have different opinions. And you can say he was a hero, you can say he was totally evil, but chances are there's something in between for everybody. It's all history is humankind.
Yeah, I was thinking that while we can look at that's done or parts of history that we can probably categorically label as evil, it is a developmental skill to be able to step back and realize, most people aren't categorically good or evil. Mm-hmm. There's such a complexity of soul. And I think that helps us understand even, or when we're equipped with that skill, to your point, Paul, when we inevitably as adults will encounter the failure of people in our lives or leaders, writ large, like you think of the failings of spiritual leaders or political leaders, the government leaders, there are all kinds of layers of people in our lives that are kind of a mixed bag. They've done helpful things and they do really harmful things. And that can kind of crash your world down if you have trouble with recognizing, okay, I can be kind of surprised, but it doesn't just turn everything upside down for me.
But
Does that make sense?
There are truly evil.
Exactly.
There are truly evil things as
that's
well.
Worth saying. Yes, exactly.
It's not all gray.
That's right.
The first example I think any of us would think of would be the Holocaust.
Totally.
Yes. There's no way to make gray out of that.
Mm-hmm. No, not at all. No.
So, but that's exactly really actually easier, I think, for students because it is black and white.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some of these other things are not.
You're right.
Which is a good skill for them to learn is like, okay, we don't want to say everything's relative because then you eventually get to that. It's almost like, I guess, a cliche, but you bring up the Nazis, the Holocaust, because obviously no one should be like, the Nazis are misunderstood. They weren't that bad. Like, no, they were bad. So they learn that too. It also can help too, broadening the cast since they're older. Like when I was in high school, I went through a similar thing where there were certain parts of a few history courses and I got older and read some things and I was kind of like a little broken by it. Like I wasn't taught that, or that's a common thing we all feel, right? We feel like something was left out, whether it's history or something else. Mm-hmm. But it also helps to broaden the cast too. Like, okay, we look at Columbus, but we also want to look at, we read from, I don't know if y'all familiar, Bartolome de las Casas, Dominican or Jesuit? Or is he Dominican?
I want to say
he's not
Dominican,
Jesuit.
but
I think he's Dominican.
I could be wrong.
Fact check us in the comments. But de Casas is a great example of this missionary priest who's critiquing and pointing out back to Spain, back to the Catholic Church, like, hey, there are things going on over here, which it was kind of like the Wild West, thousands of miles away. You've got some men sanctioned, some men not sanctioned. Cortez going on an exploration and ends up conquering, modern day Mexico. And it's very hard to patrol and police. So there are like also heroes that maybe you didn't talk about in elementary school because the kids aren't going to find a Dominican priest named maybe Bartolome very interesting. It's not as eye-catching as explorer. But it also helps them. It's like, okay, so there's also figures we can look at as well, maybe as a comfort perhaps, or I don't think there's the right word there, but a comfort perhaps for them. Like kind of almost like a sieve or a valve
like
for them.
Like everybody isn't.
Yeah.
Everybody that's doing this isn't doing it for the wrong reasons, or there are people who are trying to stop it and to make it more.
It'd be like with the Holocaust.
Moral.
Yeah. Exactly. If you just focused on the Nazis and the Holocaust and that was it, it's
very negative,
utterly soul crushing. So it's good to incorporate and talk about those who resisted it, those who pointed out, those who helped,
those who survived
those who survived it. That's very important. Yeah. Because teaching the Holocaust, it's a heavy thing. Kids know it's like coming at the end of the year, and I always, over the years, I've tried to do that because there's an emotional aspect of history that can't be dismissed. Like you're gonna feel sad, you're gonna be down or depressed by certain things you read.
As you should be.
It's caretaking for your students.
Yes, it is nice to point out the heroes when you can find them.
You just punch them in the face with something horrible. It's gonna leave them devastated. And we also need to make sure, at least I would say this for myself, they have reaffirmed humanity and faith in humanity, because we don't want them walking away thinking like all of humanity is broken and destroyed, because then that's not good for the country. It's not good for communities. It's not good for them.
Yeah. And I also think even with, like, for example, going back to the Nazis and the Holocaust, like also helping them, that's, as we've said, it's not gray, it's black and white. But also helping them know stories of Germans that resisted.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because there is a tendency to lump all of the people group in with it.
Yes.
And I remember we read in high school, we read a book that was an autobiography of a Catholic priest that was conscripted into the Nazi army.
Mm-hmm.
And, what he was trying to do in order to work with the Allies, in order to help them, because he knew what side he was on, but at the same time trying to not, trying to still love the German soldiers that he was with. Right. And it's just that's a very complex sort of thing.
It is very complex.
But having at least some, in the resistance, right? Like France, capitulates pretty quickly, but the French resistance is pretty darn strong. Right. And, and you've got you have high up people in the German army that are trying to assassinate Hitler. Right. And that sort of stuff does bring, it at least allows us to not demonize an entire people group, an entire nation, but say we wish we had more people standing up in these times that could do that.
Yeah, and that's so important, because then they can see if they're ever in a horrible situation that, hopefully we all wonder what we would do, but hopefully, if we show them enough people who are willing to put their lives on the line and stand up for what's right, that eventually, they would be able to do that as well. But they do need to know that.
Yeah, they need to know
those
that.
people were there.
Yeah.
And evil, in that case, evil isn't consuming the whole story.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great point.
And if we try to completely obliterate a side that we think was bad, right? Then we forget the whole of what that fight was over. If that makes sense, right? I for whatever reason, I've always wanted to go see Civil War reenactments, and I've never done it. I mean, I think when I was a kid,
they're so close.
I know. I think when I was a kid, I think maybe my parents took me one or two, but I can't remember them. And I keep, and my wife's like, "Where's this coming from?" I'm like, "I've always had this. I've just never talked about this. I want to go do this."
Well, you should go to Perryville.
I intend to this fall. But I think there is a degree in which we say, how could these people even put on a Confederate, uniform to reenact this, right? You can get to that degree. It's important to have that reenactment so we remember what happened. And we remember all the complexity of it as adults, right? And as kids, we were talking about the fair last time when I took my two nephews to the fair on Saturday, and they've got a whole Vietnam War exhibit that I normally breeze right past. Okay, I know what happened, but they were entranced and they wanted to go see the helicopter and the Jeeps and, but where I stopped them, and I was so grateful that there was a woman who she had volunteered to go to Vietnam as a nurse. And she was there and she was representing and wanting to talk to anybody who would listen to her about what her experience was, and the fact that she was proud of serving her country, but she was right there next to the model not hospital's the wrong word, but medic tent. And I was really trying to get my nephews to look at this and focus on this, because they get drawn into
the helicopters
and the guns and this and that. This is what happens. You end up with people that are losing legs and arms, and you need to visualize that too, not just the fun stuff that captures your imagination. And so I think as much as we can get the kids to actually whether it's going to a battlefield or whether it's going to a museum where you can see, because they don't leave that stuff out. Right. That stuff's there.
Right.
But you have to encourage them to actually
focus on it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that one of her questions was about, instilling a love of country in her students. And I don't know if is that even on your mind when you are teaching American history?
Yeah.
But before that, you've taught medieval and you've taught European.
Yeah.
So
but usually kids are we love Prussia. Yes. Yeah. Prussia's gone. So no one's or Russia or whatever. Yeah. You use history is different because we actually, this is alive and, we're involved in it and stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So is it on your mind that it could be so negative that it would teach them to be too critical of our country?
Yeah. Well, I think what's helped me at least is kind of like framing to them. It's a blessing because I get them in 10th grade. So I get to build the whole class and like how we approach history and trust and all that for 2 years. Then we get the U.S., which can sometimes be a bit more dicey or controversial sometimes because people are more invested in it. Because no one's going to email about how I talked about the Byzantine Empire in the 500s when Justinian Theodore massacred the the Nika riots and all that stuff back in the day. Won't go on that tangent. Anyway, so set up the frame. So like I tell the kids, this is my own personal like layman definition for them. It's like, okay, so what we're doing the next 3 years, we're doing a lot of things, but history is the study of why we are the way we are. So like as individual societies, why do we function the way we do? Why do we act the way we do? Why do we think the way we do? And also it's a conversation, it's a debate, it's a study on who we ought to be. So like virtue formation, like Herodotus talked about and other historians. So I was like, okay, so no matter what, I want them to learn both, analysis and perspectives and the complexities, show them. And it's really great in high school because I can show them more of the story, which forces them to think more complex, which negates them from turning to simplistic, existential, all evil, all good. So that helps out a lot, that problem. But also it helps with empathy because the more you can make them understand that humans have always been struggling with these questions of what type of society should we have? What type of government, religion? Should we have state religion, no state religion, freedom of choice, all those things, which is conversation in medieval history. Some of the earliest Christians, they're blown away learning like some early Christians like Tantius, Tertullian were calling for religious freedom based on the image of God. This should be a thing. I'm sure they also were influenced by being persecuted, but that was the part of their argument. And it's like, that's good. But you set that frame up for them. By the time you get to 12th grade, I've like stressed to them like empathy is big, like understanding our past, those who lived it, those who struggled and failed, and what we can learn from them. So when we get to U.S., they already have that hopefully built in for them, that they are studying now their country, but also they have the perspective, okay, we're going to look at the good and the bad, which I always think of this too as like the best example. Like, okay, how do I love my country and like also criticize it, and to what extent? I don't know if y'all have ever read What to the Slave is the 4th of July by Frederick Douglass. We all know Frederick Douglass, though.
Yeah.
So Frederick Douglass,
I read a really good biography of him.
Is it? Well, there's several.
It was new. It's a newer one.
Maybe Blight, I think, did one.
It was Blight.
Okay,
yes.
yeah. But Douglass, he was asked by a northern, I think it was Abolition Society. It was some society of reform because everybody was reforming America, the Great Awakening, all that. We were going to fix America, ban alcohol, whatever it was.
That's right.
And he was invited to give a speech on July the 4th as a speaker because he was obviously a famous speaker, brilliant man. And when he gives a speech, it's almost like the perfect encapsulation, I feel, because the first half of the speech is very affirming of America and its foundation, the Constitution, the glorious liberty document. And though he does subtly sneak in a little bit of your fathers subtly there to him as he's speaking, but he's very affirming and he glorifies the founders and honors them and everything and just paints a really nice picture. But then halfway through, the turn shifts and he starts to critique the nation, its shortcomings as he sees it, and Christianity, some Christians in the land's shortcomings. So he both affirms and then he kind of critiques. And both areas he's intense in some ways, but then he ends on hope. He sings. I like to imagine he sang it because we don't have the audio, but he ends on essentially almost a psalm-like kind of song. And it affirms his belief in humanity, in the progress of America, in the advancement of America. Its promises will be fulfilled and will be carried forward. And it's like a perfect encapsulation of, okay, you can... Loving your country is, yes, affirming it, is honoring it where it succeeded. It's also critiquing where it's messed up and failed, but a belief that it will persevere and press forward, which MLK carries on, of course, and I think many other figures we could talk about in all the histories. And that to me is like kind of the solve to the wound, I think, is a good example.
And I think, there's also an analogy here of when you are a child and you look at your parents are perfect.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when you get to be a teenager, you're like, God,
they're really not.
Like, what is going on here? These people are just sinners, right? And then you get to be an adult and you look back at your parents and you go, okay, I can see, like, I'm very grateful for these things that I got from them. But because I can see the bad things, I know what, like, that stuff's going to be innate in me, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to pick that up if I'm not careful.
Yeah.
And so then I have to decide, how am I going to change what I'm going to do, right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't, I think it's the same way with looking at our own history, right? If you don't recognize the good and the bad, you're not, like, if you don't recognize the good of your parents, well, then you're not going to really probably have a relationship with your parents, right? You got to recognize the good, but if you don't recognize the bad, then you can't try to improve on what your parents gave you, right?
Yeah. I think that's what I was trying to say in my comment earlier about, in so many of it, not all of us sometimes is categorically evil, but in so many people, it's just a mix. And to acknowledge them both is where you start to grow. And yeah, that's right.
I think sometimes the fear is that we teach Columbus as a hero in primary school, and then we hit 6th grade and do American history, and all of a sudden we're talking about some of the things he did that would not be heroic.
There's a pivot.
Like slave trading. And so at that point, the students are like, hang on. It's like they feel like we lied to them. And, if they really think about it, because we didn't bring all of that up. And I guess we just have to be clear and say, that really wasn't appropriate for your age. But students do recognize that. And so it makes the teacher then feel like, oh, well, we didn't really, but we do the same thing in Latin. We say, in order to find the stem of
we tricked you.
Of a verb, just
cross off the O and then
change it to an A. Change it to an A.
Later, we're like,
okay,
this is the real way to do it.
Now let's teach principal parts. So it's not just history that we lie to them about.
well, but also lie, we just
have left things out.
Right. I was going to say there's omissions, right? When I entered the boarding school in 8th grade, and I got there, and I was appalled that the majority of my companions had not studied Latin before, because in my world, everybody studied Latin. And so there was this sort of moment of for one, I was happy that I was ahead of everybody else, but I was also like, why did I have to do this the past 5 years if nobody else was doing it, right?
Did it.
And I, you do feel this sort of well, I was, under the impression that everybody did this. I could get mad at what everybody told me, or if I'd gotten mad, they would have been like, well, aren't you happy that you're ahead of people? Well, okay, yeah, I am, right? But you
feel like you've been betrayed.
Right?
Lied to.
And I think every child thinks that they understand the totality of what they're given.
Sure.
And I don't think we need to be every day being like, you don't understand all of it, right? But just there, you do see in individual students, you see when they that flip starts to switch, and you're like, ooh, they're about coming to this point.
You mean that switch starts to flip? That flip starts to switch.
It's honestly funnier when it's the other way around. I enjoy that. That's great.
I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Add that blooper in.
Whatever
and
it is.
I'm sitting there going,
something starts to change, and when and then that's when the moment where you can step in and go, hey, you're going to be learning a whole lot more stuff. You think you know it all.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you even think about, I think Alyssa's example of the biblical narrative is an excellent point, because let's take the figure David in the Old Testament. We can teach a 3-year-old to memorize part of Psalm 23, and we can talk about David the shepherd, and we can talk about how, you are
beloved
the little
of God.
Lamb. You are God's little lamb, and he loves you just like he loved David, and he guided David, and we can memorize that. And then when we look at the whole of David's life, we see he made some grave errors, and his life ended differently than maybe we thought as we were following the story as it goes along. And we explain those points differently to children when they're at different ages, and as they grow, they can understand, his life as an adult was quite complex.
Yes.
Mostly of his own doing, but his family and his authority it was difficult. And we don't just start to teach children that part.
That's right.
We teach them, the Lord is my shepherd.
Yes,
because David
right.
wrote that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And everybody's sort of reception of these things is different. Because I remember being in 8th or 9th grade reading Ivanhoe. And I had a pretty good biblical foundation. I mean, we were memorizing memory verses every week and like I knew the stories. But I'm reading Ivanhoe and there's a footnote that references Judges 4:12. And I'm like, what in the world? What is this referring to?
Who knows if it's in Judges?
It's Jael and the tent peg.
Oh.
And, and going through the guy's head. And I remember reading this and going, I've got to read this whole book. This is fascinating. Yeah. It wasn't like I felt like
Judges is crazy.
I didn't feel like my parents had hidden these bad things in the Bible. I was just like, wow,
this is
I found something new. Right. But then there were other times where I felt like Latin, like you have forced me into this for 5 years unknowingly to me. Right. And I got mad later on when I found out that mom never let an educational game or a game in the house that wasn't educational. I got really mad about that. Right. And so there's different reactions to when you find these things out.
Yeah. Different temperaments, different personalities.
I'm very happy that she did what she did. But there were moments where she would have been like, ooh, I probably should have warned them on this. That's fine. We work it out.
We do work it out. And I think just the really important thing is that we teach history in an age-appropriate way. It's why we don't do history chronologically here because Cheryl thought Greek history was not age-appropriate for a 4th grader. And so it's why we don't read Herodotus now. And, when we first started the school, my oldest son they were reading Herodotus in the 7th grade. And, there were parts where they just had to say, okay, we're going to skip this part about the Spartan voice. And then, of course, what did the kids want to read? The part we were skipping about the Spartan voice. You just have to be really careful.
Yeah.
And I think the other main point is, I love your point about just making sure that they see the good and the bad, that they see that when it is an awfully hard topic and talking about real evil, that you find some good somewhere and make sure that's a part of it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look because you do want them to learn from history, but you do also want them to love their country. And to recognize that, the heroes and the good things.
And I encounter that even outside of U.S. Like 10th grade, we do medieval. So we talk about the late Roman Empire, its collapse, and barbarians coming in, and the Eastern Roman Empire kind of continues and stuff. When we talk a little bit about Roman culture and ethics because Christianity changes a lot, but they don't really understand how big a deal it was with Christianity's ethics about the poor or women and children, etc. Unless we talk about Roman and Greek ethics, like in their view. So we talk a little bit about that. And every year in 10th grade, they're always like, we were lied to. We did not learn this about Roman, whatever odd thing the Romans had views on. And it's like, okay, you weren't lied to. It's just,
it's
7th, 6th grade, you weren't at the right place for that. Now it is. Do I get like some of them are like this. Some of them are like, oh, okay, makes sense. And some of them are like, I was lied to. It's just temperament. So it takes different approaches with kids. But yeah, I encountered that in 10th grade with them. That's like that's a good first encounter. Like, okay, you weren't lied to. It's just you weren't ready. Like, would you be ready to talk about this? Like, no, okay, that'd been a lot. So
Dustin, do you find yourself anytime a student makes like an absolute statement, pushing back on that? I mean, I find myself doing that when a student's like, oh, everybody in this group is awful or something along those lines. I just can't let an absolute statement pass because I'm like, you haven't totally taken that into consideration about what you're talking about.
So do I get that sometimes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're like one of the historical thinking skills, right, is continuity and change, which is just, I'm gonna resist the urge to quote us. There's some song that has something about the song remains the same. I don't know. Sorry, my brain. Probably some rock song or something. But continuity and change is some things change, some things stay the same. and measuring the extent. So how systems evolve, things retain. That's a complicated thing to analyze, whether what talk it might be. And they hate that skill because they just want to label it. It was absolutely this or absolutely not. And a lot of the history is pushing them to say, okay, you might say it's primarily this, or and there's secondary cause, like there's a primary cause of an event, and then the secondary cause, like ranking and stuff. And that's not natural, no. And they hate it, which is why I stress it so much for them, because it's good for them though, because they learn life is difficult. It's not always easy answers.
That's right.
And they're going to be faced with similar questions and answers, and they can't just label something simple. Oh, that's all there is to it.
And there may not be a good yes or no answer.
Yeah.
You know, it could
Might be several answers in some
cases. Or they could change their opinion.
Yeah.
And, you know, as they age and become more wise, you know, just to remain open-minded is good. But I would highly recommend, I'm going to go into a sales pitch now. Dustin has written our medieval history, European history, and American history study guides, and they are excellent. And they do there is so much help for the teacher that will actually help guide you through teaching history, not just factually, but things to think about, you know, that you would want students to think about. And I think they're some of the best study guides that we have.
I will take your word for it.
Well, they are so good. I just think anything that you write is just very, you know, a really good overview of history. And this is so important, these years of studying history. So I would highly recommend those as a tool. Even if you don't use the student guides, I would definitely have the teacher guides just to give, you know, just to know what to focus on and some different ways that students may need to think about things.
Yeah. I just wanted to create something because I got my first year teaching. I just got thrown into it. I had classes I wasn't supposed to have. This was back at my first job, not HLS. Not bad mouthing my employer or anything. It was much easier here.
No, it didn't sound odd to me that you would be thrown into
Sometimes
anything.
you are. Sometimes this stuff happens in the school summer. Somebody leaves or something. But yeah, I just wanted to create something that had resources like organized notes or like things students might have questions about or kind of like a narrative for it. Because that's what helped me is, well, I had to make that for myself and then that helped me. So
and now it's available for other people.
Hopefully so, yeah.
So it was worth all that hard work.
I don't want them to deal with what I had to deal with.
That's right. That's right.
And there is a skill too though with it, with teaching those things is some of it, when these type of questions come up with students, some of it you have to learn because there's some questions they ask that you never would have thought about. And a lot of it's like practice with them, learning, like talking to them, dialogue with them and learning from past years. Because there's been times where kids ask me questions like, I could have given a better answer for that. That could have been better. Or I didn't handle that super great.
Well,
and then it helps me learn from the future.
You know, let me think about this.
Yeah, which is always a good answer. You're like, let me come back to you. Let me think about it. Or let's talk about it after school. Sometimes it's a thing too that's happened. Especially if they get to like a derailing conversation, which can't do that with a rabbit trail. So,
yeah, this is a great conversation. Thanks, everybody. It sounds like it's really an act of shepherding, just in the context of helping
it's
them.
Caretaking, yeah,
it is exactly like that note you ended on. That there are ways to absorb and lead them through their questions that help them to grow. Yeah.
So we build a whole person, I guess. Yeah.
Did we build a whole person?
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right. Well, thank you, Dustin, for taking time out of the school day to sit with us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, Paul and Tanya. And thank you for joining us too. We'll be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.